The cop didn't shout, didn't warn me. He just stepped down from the witness stand, like court rules didn't apply to him, walked past the lawyers, past the rail, stopped in front of my bench, and slapped me across the face. Open palm full force in my own courtroom with cameras rolling. Yeah, that really happened. For a second, the whole room froze. Someone gasped, a pen hit the floor. My cheek burned, and Lieutenant Travis Keene just looked up at me like he was daring anyone to tell him no. Before I tell you what that slap did to his life and to my city, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what you think you would have done in my chair. You know what I mean. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm a judge in Easton Ridge, and I grew up as that black kid teachers talked down to and store managers followed around the guy who got pulled over for fitting a description. So when I finally put on the robe, I knew one thing. I do not get the luxury of losing my temper. Easton Ridge is a split city, shiny buildings on one side, tired streets on the other, and on that other side, where most of the people who look like me live there, are more patrol cars than working streetlights. That morning started like any other, just a stack of files and bad coffee. First case, a 17-year-old named Malik Turner, skinny, nervous, charged with refusing commands during a traffic stop. No weapon, no chase, no damaged property, just he didn't move fast enough when I told him to get out of the car. On paper, that is nothing but the report used all the phrases I've learned to treat as red flags, hostile demeanor, elevated threat, furtive movements, the kind of vague language that has covered a lot of ugly history. Then Keene walked in uniform, sharp boots polished, carrying himself like he was the real authority in the room, and when the prosecutor asked why he feared for his safety, he said, "The way he looked at me. Your Honor, on the West Side, a look can end you like that," explained everything. I wrote one line in my notebook, the same small book I use every day. He thinks he can't be questioned, and I saw I wasn't the only one who heard it. Reporter Lena Ortiz leaned her recorder closer, and behind me my law clerk Jonah Ruiz started tapping his pen, the habit he picked up watching his own father, a former cop, get punished for refusing to sign a dirty report. When Keene finished testifying and stepped down, he didn't go back to his table. He walked toward the bench, slow and casual, leaned in just close enough that he probably thought only I would hear, and said, "You sit too high for a man who doesn't understand what the streets owe us, but my bench mic hears whispers just fine." And before I could answer, his hand came up and cracked across my face. My head snapped to the side. I tasted blood. Malik flinched. Jonah's pen ripped straight through his pad. People sucked in air and then just held it, waiting to see what I'd do. Inside my chest, everything collided at once. The man in me wanted to come off that bench and swing the judge in me, wanted to shut everything down and have him arrested, but the kid in me, who'd spent a lifetime being treated as too emotional and too angry, knew that if I lost it now, the story would become my reaction, not his abuse of power. So I swallowed the anger, wiped the blood from my mouth, and said, "Let the record reflect that Lieutenant Travis Keene just struck the presiding judge in open court, then picked up the next file and forced my voice steady. We will proceed, call the next case," and you could feel the whole room shift from shock to something else, like they knew this wasn't finished, just postponed. I went home that night with my face throbbing and my pride scraped raw, but I told myself it was a one-time snap, a cop who had gotten too used to people backing down, and I tried to let it go. 3 weeks later, he walked back into courtroom 5 and proved I'd been lying to myself. Different case, same officer. This time, a 15-year-old boy with a cast on his right arm, feet barely reaching the floor when he sat in the witness chair. The report called it standard restraint. But when I saw the photos, it looked like someone had tried to bend his wrist backward. I asked what I always ask in those situations, "Lieutenant Keene, can you explain the exact circumstances that led to this child's injury," expecting a defensive speech. Instead, he stood up from the witness chair and started walking toward the bench again. "Lieutenant, return to your seat," I said, and he just kept walking slow and steady, eyes fixed on mine like this was a personal challenge behind him. I saw Lena grab her recorder. Jonah stopped tapping his pen. Every muscle in the room tightened. He came to the same spot as before, looked up at me and slapped me again harder like he was writing his own rule across my face. This time, people screamed. One of the bailiffs jerked forward, then froze my cheek, exploded with pain. My ears rang, and somewhere under all that shock, I felt something very cold, the realization that this man truly believed nothing and no one could touch him, not the law, not my title, not the cameras inches from his face. I forced my head back to center and heard myself say, "Let the record reflect exactly what just occurred." Then I looked at the cameras and added, "Keep the cameras rolling, because if he wanted to show the world who he really was, I was done protecting him from himself. We finished the docket that day in heavy silence, and when I went home I knew we'd crossed a line we couldn't step back over. That same night, while I pressed ice against my cheek, a plain white envelope slid under Lena's apartment door. Inside was a flash drive and a note that said, "Start with the oldest, they never thought anyone would look back." On that drive were 152 incident reports from almost a decade, and each one had two versions, the original and the one the department actually filed. In the originals, people were calm, compliant, non-threatening. In the filed versions, the same people were suddenly aggressive, hostile, immediate threat kids who had raised their hands or asked questions, were recast as resisting arrest. Women who had called for help were described as combative. Someone had been rewriting reality line by line, and our city had been sentencing people based on those rewrites. Down in the courthouse basement that same night, Jonah was digging through old boxes for the 15-year-old's file and pulled out one labeled Fields A, closed on review. Inside was a case he knew by name but had never seen on paper, 16-year-old Andre Fields dead after a stop on the west side. The official report said he attacked an officer and succumbed to complications on scene. Behind it, Jonah found the original draft subject, compliant, no resistance observed, and in the margin in his father's handwriting, 3 small words, refused to sign. That was the moment this stopped being about my bruised cheek and became about everything underneath it. Dead teenagers, altered reports. Good officers shoved aside for telling the truth. And once you've seen that pattern laid out on paper, you don't get to pretend you haven't. A few days later, another envelope slid under my office door, this one with 3 photos of my daughter walking across her college campus in another state laughing with her friends, and under them 5 words in thick black marker. Don't make her come home early. No demands, no phone number, just a reminder that I was not the only one who could be hurt by what I did next. I stood in my chambers holding those pictures, and every part of me that was just, her father wanted to shut everything down, call her, pull her home, walk away from the whole fight. The judge in me, the man who had just seen proof of 152 altered reports and one officer's handwritten refusal, knew that if I backed away now, I'd be choosing my own safety over every name in those files. I locked the photos in my desk, wrote the order that would bring those documents into open court, and decided that if I was going to be afraid, I was at least going to be afraid while doing my job. The hearing that followed was officially about integrity of sworn testimony and handling of evidence, but everyone in Easton Ridge knew it was really about whether the system could police itself. On the morning it opened, the hallway outside my courtroom was packed. Parents with framed photos, teenagers with Sharpie signs, officers in plain clothes, reporters everywhere. I took the bench, hit the gavel, and the room fell quiet in that way that makes you feel like even the walls are listening. This proceeding will address the integrity of 152 reports filed over the last 9 years and the conduct of the officers who authored them, I said, and then I let the paper speak. Jonah came up first with a stack of manila folders, opened them one by one, read the original line, and then the edited one, and you could hear the pattern form in real time. Calm became aggressive, compliant became hostile, asking for help became resisting. People shifted, wiped their faces, shook their heads. Then he slid one file toward me and said, "This is the report my father refused to sign," and his voice caught just enough that everyone understood what it meant. After he stepped aside, Andre's mother, Ms. Fields, stood and walked to the front holding a clear plastic sleeve. Inside was one of her son's old t-shirts. She laid it out on my bench, faint bloodstains still visible, and said, "My boy was 16. They told me he attacked them. They told me that's why he never came home. He didn't fight anybody. He never even raised his hands. I saw officers in the back look down at their shoes because they couldn't look at that shirt and still pretend this was all paperwork. Then they brought in Keen. No swagger now, no little half smile, just tight shoulders and a face that finally understood the ground under him had given way. I looked at him and said, 'Lieutenant Keen, you may remain silent. The record will speak for you today.' And he stared at the table, because for the first time in his life, that badge wasn't a shield, it was Exhibit A. That hearing blew the whole thing open. The U.S. Attorney's Office filed charges almost immediately. Civil rights violations, falsifying reports, obstruction, conspiracy, 18 counts total, and the case moved to federal court. I traded the robe for a plain suit and sat near the back while prosecutors laid the original reports next to the filed ones, showed jurors the photos of bruised wrists and broken faces, played audio of officers saying I feared for my life over and over like a script. Jonah testified about the box in the basement, his father's handwriting, those 3 words, refused to sign. When Keene finally took the stand, his voice was flat, his old confidence gone. He denied knowing who had changed anything, but the pattern on paper spoke louder than he did. The jury came back with guilty on all 18 counts. The judge gave him 18 years in federal prison with no parole. There was no applause, no celebration, just a long, tired exhale through the city, like people had been holding their breath for years and finally let it out. Inside word of who he was spread fast, and he ended up in protective custody for his own safety. But honestly, the part that stuck with me was what happened outside. A few days after sentencing, his teenage son stood on the courthouse steps holding his father's old badge. He looked straight into a local news camera and said, "I'm done with him, I don't want his name anymore," then dropped that shield into a trash can. The metal clanged against the plastic, and for a second the whole plaza went quiet. No gavel, no statute, no sentence hits as hard as being publicly disowned by your own child. These days, when I walk into courtroom 5, it looks exactly the same. Same bench, same rail, same flickering exit sign. But it does not feel the same. People sit a little straighter. Officers choose their words more carefully. And when someone says hostile demeanor on the record, I watch every face in the room tighten just a little. I still keep that envelope with my daughter's photos in my desk. The edges are yellow now. Some days I take them out, look at her laughing under a tree 1,000 miles from here. And I wonder if I did the right thing, if letting that man hit me twice and forcing everything into the open was worth what it cost to so many people. I don't have a neat answer for you. Real justice doesn't come wrapped in a bow. It comes with scars, with empty chairs, with hard questions that never fully go away. So I'm going to hand this to you since you stayed with me this long. If you'd been in my seat the day that first slap landed, would you have kept going like I did, or shut it down and walked out? In your town, in your country, have you seen anything like Easton Ridge, a cop, a boss, some authority who thought they were untouchable until the truth finally caught up? Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me where you think I was right or wrong, and if this story hit a nerve or made you look at something differently, hit like, subscribe, share it with someone who still says, that could never happen here. Because the real question isn't whether it can happen, it's what we choose to do when it does.